What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Punk Rock Review podcast. Today's episode is him hanging out with Rob, obviously, if you can't tell. So we have a particular lane that we enjoy talking about, which is one of the things that I like having multiple guests, as in like musicians, and then I have Rob, and then I have Nitty, like kind of alternating, because we I kind of like all of it, and then we have these lanes where we fit in, and this is a very exciting episode for me. I was saying all that to just say like I'm really hyped about this episode. We're talking about Alkaline Trio, Crimson, and Against Me, Searching for a Former Clarity, both hitting the 20-year uh anniversary this year, which is man, I feel old.
Wild.
What's up, guys? So we just partnered up with Dead and Buried Inc. out of LA. So if you have a band or a small business, maybe an event coming up, and you need merch, hit these dudes up. There's a link in the description. If you mention that you got there via the Punk Rock Review, you'll get 10% off of your first order. But it's super high quality screen printing, embroidery. They do shirts, hats, hoodies, skateboards, bags, whatever you want printed, they can handle it, all right? They're also a small business, and they're part of the punk rock community. They're my friends. So this is a partnership that's very important to me. If you need merch, hit these dudes up, check them out. You won't be disappointed, all right? Back to the video. So, but yeah, man, how are you today, sir?
I am doing great. These are two albums that I know so many of the songs from, but rarely listen to as albums. So the last 2 weeks of listening to them like this has been fun.
You know what's funny? I was gonna say, you know what? We'll get into it in a minute. But one of these records, I was gonna say, it's almost like I have to listen to it in its entirety, because if I don't, I feel like I'm missing something, because
Mhm.
there's a certain flow to it. So let me look at the dates on these bad boys. I'll tell you what. Let's just go alphabetically. Oh wait, they're both A bands too. Let's
Uh,
go with Against Me, just because we're going. Let's just go
Good.
alphabetically.
They're at the top of
Okay.
my notes. That works.
So excuse me. Uh, September 6th, 2005, Against Me drops Searching for a Former Clarity, 14 songs, 47 minutes, a very robust, thick, beefy album on Fat Records. This was their third album.
Mhm.
They're from Gainesville, Florida. Bro, this album, man. So I don't know how long we're gonna talk about this particular record,
Mhm.
but I could probably talk about it for 2 days if I really wanted to. This is the first the first Against Me album that completely changed how I looked at the band, and they became an important band for me. So, okay, when you look at their discography, it's their
Mhm.
third record, right? So, hold on, let me pull this up real quick. So, I had heard about them probably 2 or 3 years prior. Now, I'm not going to act like I was some super fan, because I wasn't, but I really enjoyed their music. Specifically, I think it was Reinventing Axl Rose right before this.
That was the first one. The debut was
Okay,
so
okay.
Eternal Cowboy was before this.
Eternal Cowboy. So I get them all mixed up. So okay,
Which is where
let's
you
see.
I that's where I had heard them first. So that's probably where you would have got
I'm
to
trying
go
to
first.
see here. I can tell you if I see the listings, the song listing. Nope, it was
It
definitely
was Axl
it was
Rose.
definitely their first album. So okay, my point is that I heard Reinventing Axl Rose. I heard As the Eternal Cowboy, and I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. I think I might have owned Reinventing Axl Rose, and I don't think I owned As the Eternal Cowboy, but I worked at Hot Topic when Searching for a Former Clarity came out,
Mhm.
and we got a store copy, because back then we were still using CDs. And I remember getting it and being like, "Oh, Against Me. Haven't thought about those guys in a while." And I just kind of shelved it, and I was like, "Whatever." And then I think I was doing a long day of inventory,
Mhm.
and I was bored. You know how when you get bored, you'll search for an album you've never really got into, and you'll all of a sudden discover something.
You can't put on when you can't put on like your numb stuff. You can't put on your background noise. You have to be yeah. I know
I
what you're
needed
talking about.
something new. I needed something that was gonna just
It's
kind
gonna
of,
take up your time. It's
yeah,
gonna consume you. Yeah.
because I had time to also listen. So I was like, okay,
Mm.
so I'm doing number stuff. I can listen to this music though. So I put on the record, and I hit play, and the first song is Miami. It's
Mhm.
I wouldn't call it my favorite song at all on the record, but like it's so boisterous and loud and in your face,
Powerful. Yeah.
dude. And the
Miami. I mean, it's the
fucking
scream.
Miami, hey, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's this. I was like, oh wow, it grabbed my attention right away. Is my point. And I listened to the whole record, and I didn't get much work done. And I
Mm,
was like, oh man. And so I just took the store copy home. They didn't care. I still have a couple of store copies. I have an AFI store copy. Um, but like I took it home and I think I listened to it probably 5 or 6 times completely all the way through without taking it out of my stereo. I just listened to it over and over. And the fact that it's a long record would typically annoy me. 47
mhm,
minutes is a long time. But this album is the one I was going to talk about anyway, so I have to listen to it in its entirety. It's a
mhm,
story. Laura Jane Grace has called this a concept album.
mhm.
I think, this is before she came out as Laura Jane Grace. I'm pretty sure by a couple years,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It was
And
like a decade before.
you can feel. Oh, is it a whole decade?
Yeah, because I want to say that was like 2014, and this
You
is
probably. Oh,
oh
you know
05.
what? You're right because I was in my apartment cooking for my kids when I found that out, and they were all born in 2013 or later. So yes, you are right. It had to be in like the 2000. It just feels closer than that, you know.
Mhm,
But you can feel a lot of stuff in this record. You can feel urgency. You can feel pain. Uh, like conflict is like rife in this record. You can hear the oh god, man, the songs are just so fucking good, man. Uh, Give me a little bit of your thoughts. How did you just come across this record?
so I was aware of them from Eternal Cowboy,
Okay.
and then I kind of lost track of I lost track of a lot of stuff. We'll talk about it with the next record, about mid 2005, where I just sort of stopped listening to new stuff right at that period, and then I would catch stuff later. So I caught this not too far after the fact, because the band turned out to really get big, and they were already big on Eternal Cowboy, and they stayed like super indie big in this era. So they kind of stayed. So that was the time period where like I was only listening to like No Effects and Rancid and just like, kind of nothing else new. But a band like this that I had listened to before was still kind of on the radar. And I think like Fat Records that was going through like their like commercial peak, because like it's at this time when they had Anti-Flag, Rise Against,
Yeah.
the No Effects records were there. So they were really like the hip label that was getting all the bands signed. So
Well,
that's really how I stayed aware of them.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but
Epitaph had kind of slowed down a bit, and Fat really capitalized on that. Um,
yeah, and
I re-
Epitaph had gone into more of a diverse label too, whereas Fat took over as
right.
like the punk label. Yeah.
Correct. I remember that being when I kind of started being kind of disappointed in the Epitaph releases was around that
Mhm.
time. But whatever though. I mean, dude, they're still a label that I admire a lot. So I'm not talking any crap. I remember that. So okay, one of the few things that I am so grateful for was that even at my lowest, I always kind of stayed entrenched within my local scene and like what was popular within my peer group, right?
Mhm.
If it wasn't for that, bands like Against Me, Modest Mouse, like these bands that aren't Against Me is a probably top 5 or 6 band of all time for me. But like Modest Mouse, I really like them a lot. I wouldn't call them a top band, but they're a good band that I'm glad I know of, and I knew about them before they popped off because of my friends. And that's how Against Me was. It was a girl that brought over their first album. Is how I heard them, and she's like, "Hey, you like Flogging Molly and all this like Irish folk stuff? You ever listen to folk punk?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is." And she's like, "Here, check this out." And it was like, I don't know if she even called it folk punk. I think she might have called it folky music or something. I don't know that the term folk punk was used back then, but it might have been. I don't know. I'm just saying, like,
Mhm.
I don't know that that's exactly what she said. But
Well, I would interject real quick. Against Me kind of popularized the genre. So
yeah.
even if
Well,
it existed,
that's kind of what I was going to get at here in a
it
minute.
really wasn't a thing in the way we think of it until these guys came around.
Yeah, and so I heard this stuff, and there wasn't anything like it, and it reminded me of the same way that I felt when I heard Murder City Devils. Uh, I was like, oh man, it just had a certain aura to it. There was a
Mhm.
certain amount of cool. Like I felt like, oh, I know something cool, man. Like this is fucking rad, dude. These dudes are doing it. They're legit musicians. They're good at it. They got quality songs, but like morals and ethics and character, and it's obvious. And it's just like, man, not many bands can have this I don't know, aura about them, and that's what they had. And I felt like I discovered something precious, and I remember this record blowing my mind, dude. And sorry, I keep coughing. Still
Yeah.
getting over the crud.
Well, I think one of the points that you get at is they do a lot of things that kind of go against each other that you don't think would work together because in one sense, like there's parts on like "Don't Lose Touch"
Oh,
and the
so
title
good.
track, which are like really clean and pretty sung, and there's other parts like we're talking about in Miami where it's fucking Miami, where it's like it's like a gravel grinder there is doing its thing, and it's like it's really heavy, aggressive punk rock over under an acoustic guitar, over an acoustic guitar. Like it has so many different elements that don't really make sense together. It's like you take like that Dropkick Murphy stuff and you take the Floggy Molly stuff. That stuff's like those are like big bands. Like those bands are like big parties on stage. They have multiple musicians. This is a regular ass punk band that still kind of
Right.
communicates that sort of big energy.
Well,
That's always like appealed to me about them.
100% they had. I remember when I saw them play once at a small club off of Washington Avenue, and I don't know what the dude was playing on, but it wasn't a traditional drum kit, and they had like an acoustic guitar. I think they had an acoustic bass, and then like this little bitty like 3 or 4 piece drum kit. It was like a kid's drum kit or something, and they were traveling in like a I don't remember if it was like a station wagon, but it wasn't much, dude. And I just remember being like, "Who?" This was like right around the time that I heard about them, and I think I might have even seen that show. That might have been before I heard the album, even because I remember not really understanding who they were, and then later on being like, "Oh, I wish
Well,
I had bought a shirt." You know what I'm saying?
the earlier version of them's a little bit different too. Before they
Oh
were
yeah,
like
it is.
really
It's
advanced.
way
Yeah.
more folk punky, and like the thing is that this album is like it's so layered. It's got so many different little nuances that you don't get in typical punk bands, and it's so clearly a punk rock record. But if you just listen to it, like you can let somebody from any like walk of life hear this, and I would imagine that even if they don't like it, they would go, "Oh, that's pretty good, actually." I don't know, it's not my cup of tea, but I understand why you might like it. It's got appeal outside of punk rock, but it's so very evidently at its core a punk record. Listen to the lyrics in this album; it's incredible.
Yeah, it's unapologetically punk in a lot of places. But like if I were to tell someone who was like, say you said like Mouse, if someone was like an indie rock fan, and I said I would tell them, hey, this is called heavy indie or noise indie or a Radiohead style of indie rock or something like that. I think that indie rock fan could listen to that and be like, oh yeah, that's badass rock and roll, and wouldn't even necessarily code it as punk if they were looking for. But yeah,
I,
it's so much punk, and then when you talk about the concept, you know what the concept is, right? Like that he's referring to as far as it being a concept album.
I think I do. Enlighten me.
It's them almost signing to a major label and
Okay.
all that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Because they
that
had that
yeah.
song. What's it called?
The
Multiple
unprotected
unprotected
sex.
sex with multiple partners or something. That's about like label.
Mhm.
When I first saw that, I didn't realize that until I had to like read the lyrics along with it. I
And
mean,
there's
we're
like all those
talking
specific industry terms and all that, and that's what the vibe that he was in, because so they didn't sign at this point. They signed after this album, but it really
right.
they were a real hot commodity after Eternal Cowboy, and again there was a lot of money going around for bands like this. Ultimately, they ended up staying with Fat for this one, but it was one of those things where that kind of the concept of an outcome the wolves were basically they were kind of disillusioned by the hunt for them, because they really were like we said they were a nothing punk rock concept when they came to be, and they were so juvenile in those early records in both how they presented those records and how they presented themselves, and then all of a sudden they're in these limos and they're having these meetings and
Wait,
all that.
I don't know if I agree with all that. I think they were incredibly mature with how they presented themselves. Like, listen to their lyrics. If you'd have seen them, now maybe they were just poor and like they were gonna do it regardless of what they looked like or whatever. But like,
Yeah, but I think like it was this band that was like this demystification of Axl Rose, and there was a lot of um elements that I think they very much came across as young punk though. Like I don't, and this album is completely different than that. And
oh,
and their and
okay.
their reputation and their reputation was antagonistic and like they were.
Wait, I don't have those same. experiences, so I don't know. I understand what you're saying about the other thing now. I think I
Right.
misunderstood the first part, but like, I don't remember them ever being considered like antagonistic. They were always
Oh yeah, like
considered
Rise
like,
Against and Anti-Flag hated them when they got tour with
oh
them.
really?
Yeah.
See, I
Why do
don't,
you think?
I didn't, I
Why
don't
do you
like
think?
Rise Against. I don't know anything about that band,
Why
so
why do you think Fat Mike loved Laura Jane so much back in the day? Because
really. Oh,
they could
I didn't
party.
know that.
Yeah, they could party. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
rad.
but
Well, hey, that's even cooler then. I
well,
didn't
and
know that. So
I think it's probably what inspires the really some of these lyrics later on too. Is it's that sort of um it's that youthful like energy and antagonism that they have of really coming from nothing, then suddenly having everything presented to you, and then they ended up shunning it at this point. They ended up staying with
right.
Fat for one more
Well,
record, and as the story goes, it was the making of this record that kind of soured them on Fat. It was the process of this record that they had a little bit of they had a clash with Mike over. Mike didn't like the album art. He didn't think there was really a single on there, and then so like their contention with each other was like the way that
interesting.
Against Me saw it is like they're having all the they're having kind of arguments with the label guy. They're having disagreements here. Like all the stuff that would be happening on a major label was kind of, in their opinion, still going
Happening
on.
on an
And then
indie.
like, and then they had got turned on by a bunch of like zine writers and stuff because they had gotten so big, even though they were still on Fat, but they had risen to that they kind of just said screw it, and that's why they ended up signing going forward, which ended up
I
being like a
mean,
pretty good decision for them. They they really they
I
cashed
don't
in.
I've never been one that would fault anybody for signing to a major label because I don't think that that makes a lot of sense. I think that you can be a sellout on an indie label, no problem. It's got nothing to do with what label you're on, unless you let that label dictate what you're doing and it's strictly for money. Then that's different. But like if you're signing a label, like as an example would be Green Day, they've never really changed the way that they behaved or wrote music. They just did what they did and they just got really famous. Whereas if I was like going to go and try, okay, it'd be like my channel getting picked up by sponsors versus Finn McKenty's. I'd have to say, like, I'm gonna do this how I'm gonna do this. And if a sponsor wants to give me money, then cool. Whereas he's gonna dictate his behavior, his channel, his uploads on how much money he can make, and that's just not how I operate. So, like, my only point is like I've never understood why people get mad about a band signing to a label if they didn't really change anything other than they got more money out of it. I think that they need the money, and you can see Against Me's next record, New Wave, is like that's their first major label record, and it's probably like a top 20 record of all time for me.
Mhm.
25, maybe top 25. Like it's so high. And the thing is that this record is so good that I really didn't expect them to be able to pass this up as far as quality, and they kind of did. I kind
Well,
of look at them as a pair, honestly. But
they
do
sound
what?
pretty similar too. I think, yeah. Like
Yeah.
this
Well, the
album's a
production the production is very similar, but they also changed their sound a lot with this album. So when New Wave came out, it's gonna just sound a lot more
yeah.
similar than their previous efforts.
The first two albums are like a chapter one, and these two albums are a second chapter. Speaking of
Mhm.
Sellout, really quick because I got a lot of information we're talking about. Here's Dan Ozzy's book, Sellout. Read it if you want to know more. It's got a chapter on Against Me, but a quote that I found in there was interesting when it came to Fat
I need
Mike.
to
Is
get into that book again.
despite all the issues, all the clashes him and Against Me had, he really wanted to keep Against Me on the
I'm
label.
sure.
Yeah, and his conception was exactly the same as Larry Livermore's was for Green Day. So Mike says like, okay, I told Rise Against, I told Anti-Flag, yeah, take the major label money, do that, do what you got to do. But he said in his opinion that Against Me was this underground kind of sensation, kind of cult band that he thought they would be like a Fugazi, like a NoFX, and they could have had this super underground career that could have sustained them for years and years and years and could have made it on the indies. He thought they would get like swallowed up by the majors. So he was wrong on that. I think he was right on his initial conception that they could have maybe had this sort of cult like indie following and been
They
touring on that
still
for years.
do. Like,
Yeah, they didn't lose that by going to the major. Exactly.
right.
And then they didn't get they were it was like, everything went really well for them on a major. So he was
Well,
wrong on that as a prediction, I think.
part of that has to do with the kind of people they are. Look at Laura Jane Grace. She still went out and did an entire Operation Ivy set with Catbite. They're
They're
a
touring, aren't they?
reasonable size duo.
They're touring now, aren't they? Like
Who? Well, Catbite.
But and Laura, aren't they touring? Like, or
I
is
I do. I
Isn't
don't.
like a
I
touring
can't
thing
keep
where they
up.
do? I think they do like the
I think
I-5
they.
set.
I think they did a few dates of that. I don't think they did a whole tour of that. Not to my knowledge. They might have. I don't know. I can't. I can't keep up with everything that's going on. But like that tells you a lot because that Laura Jane Grace still wants to do stuff like get with a band who's like I consider them a fairly large band at this point, but like they're not on a major big, and she's going out and doing this set with them that took probably a lot of practice and work and time, but they're doing something for the fans. That is a for the fans type of thing. Then they release it on a live album and put all the money towards charity. Like that's the kind of person Laura Jane Grace is. So you're going to get, you know, a major label artist that behaves like an indie artist. And I also wanted to shout out this book because I'm actually reading a book too right now, Days and Days, a story about Sunderland's Leatherface. This is the Chris McDonald is in that band Fucked Up. And dude, so far I'm barely into this book and it's amazing. And if you're a fan of Leatherface, which I am, you're probably a fan of them. If you're like Against Me, you might like Leatherface, and vice versa. Hot water
Laura
music, you know.
I was gonna say Laura also has a book too. I've never read it, but that's on my list of.
I'm also reading Kathleen Hanna's book. Like, what is going on? I'm reading a bunch of books.
Yeah. What's up with you? Are you okay? I'm the one that reads on this show. Okay.
I'm trying to actually make this channel worth a shit. I guess I don't know. You know, I've always wanted to read more. And I just think I'm putting my foot down and doing it now. And when I get on planes here in the next couple of months, I'm gonna be reading a bunch more on planes too. So
yeah, it's an intentional activity. You have like it doesn't. You have to. You don't think about it. It's like music sometimes can be passive. Like you
right.
No,
right.
As you do your thing. Yeah.
So okay, with this album,
mm-hmm.
there are a few songs on here. Okay, so hold on. Let me close my door. My kids are being incredibly loud. Fuck. I don't know if you heard that, but dude.
You're getting mad.
Man, I like walk over to close my door and I can hear Parker crying. And I'm like, why is he crying? And my oldest is like, he doesn't want to put on his shoes. He's supposed to be going with his grandma right now. And he's like, he just wants to sit around and watch his tablet. I'm like, no, give me the fucking tablet, dude. You're going with your grandma. Anyways, what the fuck, dude? Let me write down. It was at 22 minutes and some change. Okay. Okay. I don't even remember what I was talking about.
I think you were going to get into the songs.
Okay, yes. Okay, sorry. So, yes, there are incredible songs on this record. So the thing is that like if you want to take each individual song and say, is this a song that you like or is this one that you'd put on a playlist? I think you could do that. And some of the songs will not hold as much weight as some of the others, right? Mm-hmm. But if you listen to this album in its entirety as a story, as a concept, you'll get more out of it. I think when I listened to it today, I literally sat outside of my car to finish the record. I went through like 4 songs before I got out of my car. And it's so good, dude. By the time you get to probably at about Problems, like track 12, it ends, and then you forget that you still have 2 really good songs coming. And it's like, it's got these ebbs and flows and these waves that come at you. And I don't know, man. I don't understand how Fat Mike could have listened to this record and said that there weren't singles on it. That doesn't even make sense to me, dude. Like, How Low, maybe not a single, but a really good B-side. Joy could have been a single. Unprotected Sex with Multiple Partners could have been a single. Miami could have been a single. I think it was. Don't Lose Touch, absolutely.
Don't Lose Touch was a single.
Oh, dude, like that song is one that like is an all-timer for me. But this whole record is just, I'm not gonna call it perfect, but it's close, man. I think it's a little heavy, if I'm honest. If I have to be real brutally honest about it, there's probably a song that I would take out or 2, maybe. I couldn't tell you what they were off the top of my head. But the songs that I've got that are like starred that I already have on playlists would be Unprotected Sex with Multiple Partners, Pretty Girls, The Mover, How Low, Joy, and Don't Lose Touch. Those are all songs that I currently have in multiple playlists on my Spotify. But I don't know, man. I don't think there's really any song on here that I absolutely don't like. It's kind of an incredible record if you want my honest opinion.
Yeah, and I think you described it well, as like it's heavy. I think probably a little. It's like it's like a really good tasting like IPA or something like that. Like it's not actually good to drink, but you know you understand and appreciate how it tastes and how you can experience it. Miami's a great one, as we said, the opener. Violence is great. Unprotected sets with multiple partners, with all the industry terms and all that.
Yeah.
And then I really like the end. You talked about how you sort of see it as like from Problems and then don't lose touch and clarity. And those songs definitely go together. But I have the similar thing, but I go from Problems to Don't Lose Touch to Clarity on listens of it. And I did that this week because it's such that lengthiness of the album where I would pick out little parts of it and little ebbs and flows, because again, it's music that I like and music I've listened to over the years, but I'm not like 100% familiar with it the way I could just like jump in. But there are those songs that stand out and you sort of connect them because it is like, I guess you would call it a dense record. Maybe there's
no,
there's
it's
a lot
very
on it.
dense.
Yeah.
It's a very dense. I would say that I'm probably the bigger fan of this band of the two of us.
Oh yeah.
I spent a lot of hours listening to this record, this band in general. Like I will say that I've fallen off in recent years where I don't know as much of their current music, but I do know some of the songs, but all the way up to and including New Wave, like honestly, dude, like I kind of love everything that they've done, man. Dude, yeah, they're such a good band. They're fantastic live, or they were. Again, I haven't seen them in a long time. I think that Against Me is kind of not doing a lot right now. Oh, dude, they're great live.
I've never seen. Yeah, they're one of those bands. One of the bands that I haven't seen that's in that mix.
Dude, they played. Oddly enough, they played with Murder City Devils at South by Southwest at one point, like way back in the mid 2000s. And I don't normally like big outdoor shows like this, but it was so good because they were on like a side stage, and it was really clear that they were still popular. But it was also clear that like the people that were listening to like the hip hop stuff, they didn't really care. So it was just densely packed in with all these sweaty punk kids, and we were just. I remember like just freaking out, and the stage was kind of tall because it was at a pavilion, and man, it was fun, dude. Like I've got so many fond memories of this band.
They're a perfect kind of hip band, I think, to play a South by Southwest. One of those like one of those like you got to be cool in whatever scene you're in.
They kind of are a hipster band, but it's like not in a bad way. Like they're a hipster band, as in like they give credit to the hipsters almost. Like the hipsters like these guys, and I go, okay, well, I guess you're not so bad then, because Against Me is a really good band.
Well, like
instead of it being like the opposite.
Maybe if hipsters were more like this, like
right,
be so annoying.
Yeah, this is a great. Do you have what's your favorite song on the album? Do you have one?
The closer, the title track.
Really?
Yeah,
that's a hard song for me to even listen to.
And then I again thinking back of it, like there was no indication back then really of any of this stuff, but he literally talks about the line about trying on his mom's clothes and stuff like that.
Right. Well, that's why I thought it was closer to the date of that, because I had heard this today and I was just like, oh yeah, I forgot about that song. But I think that Don't Lose Touch it's the obvious answer. It's just a song that I love truly, deeply, and legitimately. But How Low is a song that I personally relate to, like almost too much. Wish I didn't, kind of, but I listened to it, and I've sat down and like listened to that song strung out and cried and wished I could get off drugs. But I've also listened to it as a sober person and appreciated the stories that I get to tell and the life that I've lived. And I don't regret much of my life, man. There's a couple of things that I wish I hadn't done. I wish I hadn't cheated on a girl once because it hurt her really bad. And I don't think that's cool, man. I think I should have been a better person than that. But like all the drug stuff, man, it is what it is, dude. I wouldn't be where I'm at now, and I wouldn't have the thick skin that I've got. I wouldn't have the knowledge that I've got if I hadn't done all that stupid shit back in the day. So there's a certain appreciation I have for my past. So I don't really regret much. Now, I try to behave better these days, but I wouldn't even know how to do that if it wasn't for my sketchy checkered past. So, that song How Low is probably one that's the most important to me, even though it's not their best on the album. But I like how that they did. I think it's hilarious and ironic that they have this entire record about fuck the music industry, basically, and then their very next album is on a major. And I think it's funny how because they have no reason to worry about it, but people probably, I don't remember what people said about it, but I'm sure people didn't like that they signed to a major.
Well, they didn't like him before that. They didn't like him already. Like that was kind of, they were already,
so they were already the band that was cool to hate.
Yeah. And then I think honestly, by the time they got to the major, it's literally in that time period where it didn't matter anymore. Like it was how quickly that sort of, what I mean? It's right in that late 2000s where like, oh shit, someone's going to give me money to make music. I'll take it. You know what I mean?
On
it just doesn't matter as much anymore, you know, in that same way.
New Wave is another album that I think is probably close to perfect, but it's got a song on there that might be a top 10 song all time. Thrash Unreal is a song that
Mhm.
the second that I heard it, I am pretty certain I cried. Because like, dude, I'm an emotional person, and I cry kind of easy because I get overwhelmed real easily.
Mhm.
And so like I'm not some just like whiny baby. I just have like things hit me emotionally, and I don't have any way to control it, so I just don't. But that song is so dark and
Mhm.
it's so bouncy. It is such a odd like pairing of sounds and feelings that I love it, man. I love a dark song, which is another reason why I like the next band we're about to talk about, is because they have songs that are really dark, but they're super catchy and stuff. So yeah, man, Against Me, Searching for a Former Clarity, hit 20 years this year, or will hit 20 years this year. I think it's an amazing record. I just wanted to explore it a little bit, break it down a little bit, appreciate it a little bit. And then we'll move on to the next record. So you have any closing thoughts on that album, or are we ready to go on to the next?
No, we can go on.
Alrighty. Okay, so May 24th, 2005, we get the fifth studio album by Alkaline Trio. It is produced by Jerry Flynn. It is called Crimson. Yeah, dude. You know they almost called it something else? They almost called it Church and
Church
Destroy.
and Destroy, yeah.
I didn't know that until earlier today. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah, man. Look, dude, I talked a lot about Against Me. I love
Mhm.
Alkaline Trio too. They're like a top 5 or 10 band for me, but I know you like Alkaline Trio probably as much as I do.
Mhm.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about Crimson first, and then I'll kind of give my response to it.
Yeah. And to context what we're saying there, I think he technically likes some more because when we did our top pop punk bands of all time, Alkaline Trio was number 2 for me and number
Yeah.
1 for Randall. So to give you context how much we like this band. Now,
Yeah.
Crimson is, if Alkaline Trio has this, I would say a consensus peak where everything is going for them, where they're commercially great, their music sounds great, like everything is really clicking for them. It's probably a 2 album cycle with Good Morning and Crimson. This is sort of the bookend of it. I know Vice once referred to this part of their career as the creamy middle, and I think that's such a perfect way to state it. So Crimson is not one of my personal favorite albums, but I mean, again, we did our list. I think I had it at number 5 or number 6, but that just
Whew,
speaks to
that's
how much
wild.
I love the early pop punk Alkaline Trio. Like that, what makes Alkaline Trio one of my favorite bands is that stuff. And not that this is bad, but I really love that. With that said, there is no way for me to objectively look at this album and not say that this, or say maybe for Good Morning, is not their absolute peak. It is not the, like, objectively, I think, the best thing they ever did. You talked about darkness earlier in the transition. Well, they never made an album darker than this by far, and they're a dark band, but this is dark. This is sort of the peak of that theatrical Alkaline Trio thing that they really were leaning into a lot on Good Morning, but they went full on on Crimson. And they also, once again, just like Good Morning, they had a lot of time to make the songs. They had even more time to make the songs. They had another album cycle with Jerry Finn, and it must be something after your other album did really good. Well, you know now you got more money and you have more opportunities
Right.
and just more time to work on the songs. And that's always been the thing, I think, with Alkaline Trio. Really, they're sort of they're on this kind of paradigm between like the Alkaline Trio like peak sound, which is this emo pop punky 80s kind of sound that they have, like that, this stuff, and like the pop punk band they started out with. And the only real difference always is album to album is in how much time they have to work on each album, which makes me think that like most of their
Right.
songs kind of start out as these pop punky songs, and the more time we have, they turn into Your Neck or something like that. Like that's sort of how the cycle seems to go. So this is them again, I think, at the peak probably of their resources as a band, a peak of their performances individually. They're great musicians on everything, but they were great on here. And then you have Jerry Finn, so they sound amazing. They've always sounded good, save for maybe that first album, but they really sound good. And it's got this, the production on this album has that thing where, and this is a trio here, you could hear all 3 guys a lot on it. Like Dan has such a spot in the mix on so many of these
Yes.
songs with that bass tone. I can't say enough good things about this album, except for I have never owned it. And
What?
as I mentioned before, I figured this out like 2 months ago.
That
The
blows my
re-
mind.
yeah, so the reason, and I remember when this album was, so the name was changed to Crimson. Because again, this is right in the peak of like my era of Warped Tour and all that stuff. I remember me and my friend trying to figure out what Crimson meant, and he found the color purple, all of that stuff. Anyway, this came out the week I graduated high school, so I guess I just like never bought it like that
Interesting.
week. You know what I mean? And I know all these songs forever and ever, so I just never actually purchased the album. But then again, you talk about that transition time in the mid 2000s. Actually, purchasing an album became less and less of a impediment to hearing the album. And then it's funny
True,
because I bought Remains right after this. I bought everything they had. I bought the
dude.
Goddamn It reissue, all that stuff. I just specifically never bought Crimson, so that's why I think I have a weird appreciation for it as an album that's very unique to me, while it's still acknowledging it's pretty much the best thing they ever did.
Well, I really, really, really love this album. Remains is a great compilation of songs as well. Remains is probably like just a top record for me because it's got so much stuff just all in one package. But I don't really care for their first two records very much. Maybe I'll Catch Fire has grown on me a little bit, but I just prefer, because I didn't even hear about the band. Like I'm not gonna fake it, dude. I hate when people do that. Oh, I was a fan of them. No, man, I didn't even know about them until From Here to the Infirmary. I mean, like
Mhm.
maybe I had heard them before that, but I wasn't like a fan of them until that album came out. And that's where I think they kind of not necessarily peak there. I think Good Morning is their peak. I think it goes From Here to the Infirmary, Good Morning, Crimson, and then that's their like
Mhm.
overarching top three, at least for me, right? But this record is the perfect blend of the Misfits and the Cure. It's like literally
Mhm.
a blend of the two things, and it's amazing, dude. And I was listening to. I've been trying to go back and listen to like little breakdowns by other people and interviews with the bands when we're doing this stuff, so that I can have
Mhm.
more knowledge on the particular release. I don't know. I guess as I'm getting older, I'm really valuing like knowledge more so than just do I like the song or not. Like I want to know more about it.
Yeah.
And Matt Skiba was talking about how he was listening to a lot of three-piece bands that had really interesting guitar tones that made their sound very full. And he cited Jawbreaker as like a big influence
Mhm.
during this time. And I can't hear like an exact reference where I go, okay, this makes me think of Jawbreaker, but I can understand that he was listening to Jawbreaker when he wrote this record based on how full the album sounds with one guitar player.
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Well,
this album is pretty incredible.
Alkaline Trio, I think, is one of the bands when you want to show the influence of Jawbreaker, where it's just so obvious through all of their music. Like they don't have the aesthetic of Jawbreaker, but the way, and I think the guitar is a big part of it. The way they sound so busy. That's because pop punk kind of sounds thin, like we always talk about. That's kind of one of the
Right.
characteristics of it, and one of the difference between bands like that is they really can fill it up. And similar to Jawbreaker has that real muddy bass tone, which Dan doesn't have the muddy bass tone, but he has a very one that's very much in your face. Um, no, I you said something earlier. No, I think I think that's the good that is the 3 album peak too, because Infirmary is my personal favorite. So we're really moving things
I think
around,
I
and
think I think it's probably mine too. I don't know. It's a coin toss between that and Good Morning, I guess, but it's so
it really is. This album though, it's weird though because it's more of like an epic than any of their other albums. Like I think of all the great like guitar intros that usually start off Alkaline Trio albums, and this one starts out with some piano on Time to
I
Waste
like
before it
that,
comes in.
dude.
Oh,
Time to
it's
Waste is a
awesome.
really good song.
It's awesome and it's eerie. It reminds me of like all the Metallica records would always start out with a little acoustic guitar, and I always thought of that as like the intro basically before we smash your face, kind of thing. And most of the Alkaline Trio records, I always think of like them starting again with these big sort of like the Private Eye guitar intro and these
Yeah.
big guitar intros. And this one has that piano that really sets the tone of what this era of Alkaline Trio is like, that piano-y as you said, kind of like the
Very
Misfits with
yep,
the Cure.
epic. More what's it called? More ballad type
Yeah,
sounds.
yeah, they're like theatrical, I guess in the
Yeah,
way,
theatrical is a
that,
very good descriptive word.
and it's funny because the Misfits and the Cure, one thing they definitely share is theatrics,
Yes.
and this is a melding of those. Really, I like when you were saying about that. I was like, huh. So this is what like post punk should have sounded like. Like post punk wouldn't have sucked
Oh, I
if
so agree
this
with
would have been
that.
it. Like,
Well,
and
that's
it's
why I
funny because
like. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I say like Matt loves all that new wave stuff. Like Matt is so
Yeah,
obsessed basically with post punk. That's like the genre. He
yeah.
tries to dress like that. It's like, oh, he kind of perfected it right here. I thought that was really
Well,
interesting.
no, that's one of the things I love about Cold Oi is that it's like punk with post punk influences and new wave influences, and I'm like, oh, if they had made new wave and post punk sound like this, I would really love it. But I mean, whatever though, I don't really care. Something that I just wanted to show you that I think is pretty funny, dude. Is I got this Good Morning cassette tape. Hold
Oh
on.
wow.
It's a pretty old tape, right? And I was like, I collect weird tapes and stuff, but when I got it, look at the dude the spelling on it. Can you see it?
Morning, like the like morning correctly.
Yeah, it's an
It's the
Indonesian, and it's from Indonesia. So like the tape is very much a bootleg, and they
well, I
just
was gonna
like
ask, what did that ever get released on cassette? I
well, Indonesia has a giant like cassette culture because it's cheap and you can make them over there real cheap, and
mhm.
like people still carry Walkmans. Like they're like 25 years behind us in technology. And so like right now today, albums are still getting bootlegged in Indonesia on cassette. So if you want a cassette that doesn't really come out on one, I bet you can find it in Indonesia. I've got a Now Come the Wolves and a Let's Go from Indonesia as well. And they're all have these weird like missteps. Like they have like the art is different, their spelling's all wonky on it. It's kind of charming to me. I love it. The
Well,
sound, some of the song orders are wrong. It's weird, dude.
that's a fun quiz for like, are you a real fan? If you put that in front of like, what is wrong with this? Because technically it's spelled correct. I like that.
Right, it's weird, man. But yeah, dude, Crimson as a piece of artwork is also almost perfect. There
Mm.
are two glaring weaknesses on this album,
Lay them
in
on me.
my in
I
my
want to hear this.
opinion. Oh
I have
man,
one.
you're probably okay. You're probably going to disagree with me then.
Okay.
But track 10 and 13, Prevent This Tragedy and Smoke, I can't stand either song. I don't like
Okay.
either song, but every other song is so good that it's kind of like, yeah, but like I can't give it a 10, but I can give it a 9.5 still. That's how I feel about it. You
Smoke was
know,
on my list. That was one
of
of my
songs
two
you do like or don't.
that I don't like. Smoke. Well,
Yeah,
either there was one throwaway song, and I said it's cool. I have in my notes. It's cool. I just don't really like it as an Alkaline Trio song. It's just
right. So
yeah.
I wrote down on this. I put down the song "Prevent This Tragedy." Coincidentally, the only one of the only songs I don't like on it refers to the West Memphis Three, whose trial and conviction for a triple homicide back in '93 is considered very controversial. I don't know a whole lot about that. I know what it is, but I don't know any of like the history
Oh
behind
wow,
it. I
lots of
just
documentaries. There's so many
no,
doc.
no,
So
no.
there's
I know that, but I just I've tried to like find some time and interest in it, and I just don't think it's something that I'm super interested in. I guess I don't
I
know.
I've spent many a weekends in West Memphis 3.
No shit. Okay, is
Lore.
it worth my?
It's I
I
don't
know it's
know
about
because
three. Is it three brothers or
three
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 kids?
three young
Three,
boys,
three,
yeah, three
three young boys
8-year-old
that like
boys,
got
yeah.
accused of killing some people.
No, three 8-year-old boys who were victims, and the alleged perpetrators were teenagers. But the reason why it's so
Oh,
but
okay, okay,
the
okay.
reason why it's so prevalent, I think, with people like us is like alternative culture very much became a part of that story. One of the framings that was sort of used as a not a conviction device, but a character device by the prosecution was the fact that like the boys listened to metal music and that kind of stuff. So
Oh,
over the years, it's sort of and there's a way more so this is why you need to really there's way
yeah.
more
I guess I'm
details
gonna
to
have
it
to watch
than that. However, it had
documentary.
become like a cause for a lot of like alternative celebrities. So it's
Interesting.
it's very much a well known thing. It's just one of those pieces of culture
Well,
that
I read a small blurb on it today, which I kind of was like, man, and it did get me thinking a little bit. So I guess I'll have to explore that topic here in the near future. But
if you have HBO Max, I guess Paradise Lost
oh, I
is on there.
do.
That's the original.
Okay,
So that's how not how most people know about it, but that's what kind of got the discourse started on it was that documentary coverage of the
okay.
case, and then from there, there's kind of the rabbit hole. You could probably go from there.
Well, am I mistaken, or are they considered like innocent by a lot of
Well,
people?
they are all three free right
Okay.
now. They took
Oh,
what they
okay.
called an Alford plea. So at different times, public perception has thought of them as wrongfully accused. So there's a pretty big innocence movement for them that there was at the
Okay.
time. There's also a pretty significant like the convictions were correct. Like that's not insignificant either. And
Sure.
there's a ton to dive down with. It's a case I find endlessly fascinating. It's gruesome though. Like those documents, don't watch them like when your kids are around or anything like that. You know?
Okay. Well, no, now I mean you've piqued my interest. Now I want to go and but I mean this is another reason why listening to these records and doing these podcasts with my friends is so important because I don't know that I mean I don't guess it's gonna necessarily help me in any way to know all that stuff, but I am interested in like true crime to a
It's
degree.
just
So
something kind of well. Next time you hear that song, you might be like, oh,
well
that's that
that's
thing. And yeah.
yeah, so well the other song that they've got on here, Sadie, is also about some true crime stuff. Susan Atkins, murder in the Charles Manson family. She was part of the Sharon Tate stuff from '69. That's a song that you want to know something funny, dude? Is that like I don't know that I even knew that was.
We're gonna say the same thing. This is for the one man army split. That's
Wait,
not a
what?
Crimson song. This is not a Crimson song. Oh, I thought you were
Wait, what?
like. Do you associate this song with Crimson?
Oh shit! I hit the wrong button. I'm probably gonna screw up the. Oh no! My camera. Yeah. Crap. Hold on one second. All right. Let me start the recording over. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second. All right. All right. Sorry about that. So I have two buttons that are very, very similar looking. That one is one program was the other. When I hit it, it opens up my stream, not StreamYard, but whatever the other one's called that I use.
Streamlabs.
Streamlabs. It opens up my Streamlabs, and then that triggers my camera, and then it puts me in this weird thing.
Yeah.
Okay, what were you saying about the Alkaline Trio thing and the split?
I was gonna say, do you associate Sadie with this album, or don't you associate it with the one man army split?
If I'm real honest, dude, I don't listen to that split.
No.
No, because I've got all the Women Army songs like on a separate thing, and so I don't listen to. I don't. This is gonna sound so stupid. I don't like split CDs, but I like them on vinyl. Like if I can flip it over and have a side and a side, I like that. But when it's on a disc, it bothers me. Unless they alternate songs, they should go Alkaline Trio, Women Army, Alkaline Trio, Women Army. To me, that makes more sense. I don't know why, but no, I consider this a Crimson song. Is it not?
Well, no, it came out the summer before, and it was like kind of a big song for them, and then it was on the album. So I've
that
always,
kind of that makes sense why they put it on the album then.
yeah,
Like we know this was going to get some spins. Let's put it on the record.
and then I think they also put it on Remains too, did they? Because they had the whole split on Remains. So I think this came out. I want to say we should probably look that up, but I think this song came out like on 3 consecutive releases. And it's like this. It's like the same version too. There's no different version of it.
It's not even a different version.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe they re-recorded it and played it perfectly. If that's the case.
Well, I think that part of the reason why they have this song on this record is because they were talking about. So I was listening to a. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah,
it's
it sure is.
Also.
Huh. It's yeah, I think it is the exact same version. I was listening to a video about Against Me, and then I was listening to a breakdown on Crimson as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about how this entire album is made up of stories that are real. None of it's make believe. You have stuff on like From Here to the Infirmary and even on Good Morning and their early stuff that's like just kind of hooky, spooky make believe stuff, like Halloween songs more or less. Whereas this is a darker album and it's a very real album, and I think that might be why they included Sadie. Is well, not only that, but obviously the it being a prominent song. It's a good way to. Back then, you needed stuff like that. Just you were selling records. It's this 2005. You're still selling albums and CDs. So
I have a quote on it actually.
Okay.
That I found here. So Sadie had a Wikipedia page, and I clicked it, and then here's a quote. The fill in the song was different, so we were just trying to go for something. A blaring sort of rock and roll guitar in the beginning, we wouldn't have really been appropriate. We wanted something that was dirty and dark, but not too dark where it was dull sounding. We messed around it for quite a while, and then we went on to do Crimson, and we sort of emulated that tone as best we could without completely trying to redo it the way it was done originally. So I guess it's a slight re-record, but they also said, So let me start from here. Sadie was written by Skiba while the band was on tour in support of their '03 album Good Morning. It was initially played only at sound checks for their shows, but the diversity in it that it had to their sound for their previous songs grew fondly with the band, which led them to record it for the BYO Split Series Volume 5. At the same time, however, all three members knew that Sadie was the tone they wanted to set for the next album and intended to re-record it for the so they liked the song themselves too, and
Oh, that's awesome.
that was a bit of a template that makes
That makes a
total
lot of
sense.
sense, dude. It
That
makes a
actually
lot of
sort of
sense.
so I'm glad we did a research here on the show, but that
Right.
actually
Well,
they still released it basically the same song three albums in a row though.
and it's very strange, but whatever, man. But I also have a small quote here that Matt Skiba says that this is their darkest, saddest record in his opinion because it was written about the horrors of real life experiences and not make believe things as they did in their previous records. That's what I was getting to a minute ago. So that's something that Matt Skiba has said, and this record is more of a operatic like. It's also like it gives me searching for a form of clarity at the same time. It was their first album that sets a new tone for them. It puts them in a different direction a little bit, and it really gives you a different feeling for the band. Same thing happens with Alkaline Trio and Crimson is you get this new direction of their band, and like he was just saying about Sadie, it was a intentional direction switch. They intentionally went that way, and I think for the better. I know that there's some purists out there that really only like their early material, and look, if that's the way you feel and you think that everything up to and including From Here to the Infirmary is solid, but you don't like anything after that, dude, whatever, man. That is a-okay with me. I don't care. I don't agree, but I don't care. But you like what you like. But this record is almost perfect, man. The two songs I don't really care for, I don't dislike them to the degree where I won't put the record on for it. But if it's on a CD or a Spotify thing, I will absolutely skip them. And I've also been, I've played this record on like LP and not even played the B side because the B sides were those two songs that lie that I don't care for, and I just don't even see the point in playing the B side when there's 40% of it I don't care about.
Oh, I'll also say, you know what? I'd add the Poison to like I don't hate the Poison, but I don't love that song. To me, that song's a
Oh my
little bit
goodness!
of a pivot for me, and I just
So it's funny you say that because I was literally going to say that's like a sneaky, really good deep cut.
Mhm.
It's a really good song that Dan wrote, in my opinion. And I'm not going to say that you're wrong necessarily. I like that song.
I don't feel if there's a criticism of this album, I don't feel vocally this is one of the stronger Dan albums. I feel like Dan was amazing on Good Morning, and I think that we broke it down. The latter part of their career, he's almost like this equal, and there's a lot. But this album, I think, is a very Skiba. I think it's just Skiba's very influential. There's a lot of these songs are Skiba's. I just think he's shined a little more vocally on this album.
I would agree with that. But the Poison is one that like I didn't love a lot, and then today I listened to it again, and I was like, man, I really do like this song, and so I just wanted to give it a little love. I think it's funny that you're like, yeah, it's not that's one I don't really care for, and I was like, of course. We always have these. This is where we bicker. We don't bicker on like albums being good.
We agree on like
songs.
98% of things, and we focus on the 2%.
And then we focus on the 2%.
2 hours about discussing those. Yeah,
dude. I don't know, dude. I don't think that they got much better than this. I will say their most recent record is like a top 2 or 3 record for me, man. Like it is so good.
Well, wouldn't you agree that that album very much feels it's got a lot of tonal similarities to Crimson in a way that the 2016 album I think feels a little more like their earlier like an homage to their earlier stuff?
Okay, so my opinion on that is that their recent record, what was it called again?
Blood,
Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs.
Eyeballs, yeah.
So I feel like that album to me represents like a rebirth more than I think it represents anything resembling
like a past.
Yeah. So, and I don't say that in a disrespectful way. I hope that comes across as respectful. I mean it to. It's what? Let's see. It's 11 songs. How long is it? It's a shorter record, isn't it? Anyways, it's almost perfect, man. I really, really, really like their new record, but it's got like I guess the songs themselves, like the actual chord progressions and all that stuff, are tonally similar, and thematically it's tonally similar. But there's something in it that isn't in Crimson. Crimson is a darker, more sad, somber album
Mhm.
than their most recent. The most recent one, it just has, you can feel some life being breathed back into the band. I mean, they went through a lot dealing with all the Blink 182 stuff and da 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 da, and then Matt getting sober and really trying to clean his life up. They went through a lot. They've been around a long time at this point, so their record won't sound the same. But I can see your point. I think I disagree based on the fact that surface level, yes, but once you get below that, you're like, I can see a lot of differences. But I guess maybe that's what it is though. Tonally, it's very similar, and then
Well, and I
below,
would, yeah, and I think like the stuff that Skiba made in the Blink era, I think the reason why it conjures back maybe to some of the earlier stuff is because again he maybe had there was less time to focus on that stuff,
yeah,
or that's also why the dance songs were really strong on those albums because he had even more. I think they're in a good place though. Like I re-listened to the new album about 2 weeks ago because I listened to it so much when it came out and we did the show. I kind of took a little break from it, and yeah, it's still pretty damn good. Like it for a reason it won all those best album of the year awards from guys that like listen to the albums that we listened to. It deserved it,
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
It was one of my favorite of the year for sure, and I still listen to it pretty regularly, man. Um, yeah, dude. I don't know. I thought that. Yeah, I don't know. I really like their all their stuff, man. I love this band. I really love this band.
I was gonna say on Prevent This Tragedy, I actually hear like some versions of what I think Skiba and Mark Hoppus were trying to do with Blink with like their version of Blink. I feel
Okay.
like that's like a better version than anything they actually did together.
Okay. I'm sorry. Repeat that one more time.
So I think that Prevent This Tragedy is like a
Okay.
proto version of what the Skiba Blink experiment was kind of trying. Like I could hear a lot of those Skiba
Oh, okay.
style Blink songs in the way that song starts out, and a lot of those elements. I think this is better than a lot of the songs that he did with Blink. And this is like because it's complete like Alkaline Trio mode, but it reminds me of the songs that they were sort of writing at that point. Like it's a song I
Okay.
could have seen him bringing to Blink, and they because it just kind of sounds, especially at the beginning, kind of sounds like the songs from those two albums, in my opinion. Especially it sounds like songs from that second album from
I'm
Nine, I would
gonna
say.
have to go back and like listen to it again and just kind of revisit that.
I,
Oh,
I
go ahead.
I'm obsessed with looking for traces of Skiba Blink in other Blink and Alkaline Trio music. Just I'm so not perplexed by it, but it's such a thing to its own that I'm always trying to find the remnants of it in other places.
Well, yeah, man. I don't know, dude. I love Alkaline Trio. I don't know. There's a whole lot else to say about it. I give this record like a 9.5 out of 10. Uh, the highs are so high that the lows don't even really matter because they're very few and far between. I think that Against Me's record from the same year is basically perfect. If anybody's still watching this, man, please let us know in the comments some other albums that may have come out in these like uh
The
90,
middle.
95. Well, like anything that would hit like a 5 year anniversary of some kind, like 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years ago that you might want to hear us talk about because I look for them all the time and it does get a little bit tough sometimes. I found a couple I think we could cover on our next episode. I think, how do you feel about doing the debut of Jawbreaker and maybe the debut of Green Day?
Oh, that'd
On
be
a,
fun. That'd be fun to do as an episode because that'll be fun to do research together. I know both of those albums slightly, so I'd have to do a little bit of research. I like pairing Jawbreaker and Green Day though. I love that idea
That's what I was kind of thinking. It would make
as
for
an
a
episode
couple of
concept.
weeks of listening to stuff that I thought you might appreciate. Because I was also thinking of doing uh, the Queers Grow Up and Mr. T Experience, making things with light. But I love those records so much. So I would like to do those at some point. How do you feel about doing like the Green Day thing first, and then we'll do the pop punk, like the Ramones core
The
stuff
Ramones. Yeah,
next?
let's set the stage for that scene with Green Day then. Yeah, that'll kind
Cool,
of work. Yeah.
cool. I'll just write that down on my notepad so I
So
don't forget.
we're doing 39 Smooth and then
And was it Unfun? I think is what
the
it's
one with
called.
the cat on the cover, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, Unfun. I'm not a big Jawbreaker guy. Like I don't. have a lot to say about them. So let's give it a whirl. I think I might even revisit that one with Nitty. I think he's a Jawbreaker fan. So
I think we're gonna have
we should do an episode with all three of us one of these days, just like something like maybe in April, whenever the channel hits 2 years.
Yeah, I keep seeing these thumbnails. I'm like, wait, me and him didn't talk about that yet. And I was like, oh yeah, there's someone else.
Dude, if we have, I mean, you ever want to revisit a record that me and him talked about? By all means, just say the word, dude. It don't matter to me.
No, yeah, I assume we'll do most of the ones that you guys did as well, because it's different kind of conversation. So
it really, well, that's the thing, is it is, and I have people that like watching your videos, and I have people that like watching them with him, and I have a lot of people that like watching all of it. So, but there is definitely different groups of people that like different stuff, and I mean, I get clowned on some stuff. You've been clowned on it, and so is he. So like, there's also haters of all kinds, but it's. I have a lot of fun doing this. How do you feel about Leatherface?
I'm not good enough to talk about.
Okay. So I'm gonna bring that up with him because he loves Leatherface, and so do I. So I'm always looking for subject matter to talk about. I've got a lot of stuff. Check this out. What do you think about this? I'm doing. Actually, you know what? Let's end the show, and I'll tell you this off the air, so we're not wasting people's time. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, man. I appreciate it. Please go listen to these records. Spend some time with Against Me, and spend some time with Alkaline Trio. Also, if you want to support the channel, there's ways to do it. Links in the description. Otherwise, have a great day. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.